open in a word of prayer for us, please? You know I was gonna ask you, right? So you weren't prepared? Just start praying. Someone? We'll just bow our heads. Please, thank you.
Dear Lord, thank you for giving us this time again to let us gather and learn your words, and hope you be with us this time and let us focus on your words and learn from your words that make our relationship of husband and wife, the relationship you like, and through that we glorify you. In your name we pray.
And thank you, brother. We were about to get into the sin aspect. Thank you, friend. Change that. School's website wouldn't let me get into my own thing. That's bad. I have to use my cellular signal for that. Okay. So chapter 3 of Genesis, and then we're gonna get into the consequences. Let's see. We left off at what question? Okay. Okay. That was we finished 9 and now we are looking at 10. This is critical actually. We're going to be talking about the relationship between husband and wife and we will address some of the issues that husbands and wives go through because of this. Okay? So let's look at that and ask the question here in 10. What types of curses did Eve receive and how are they related to the original purpose? Okay, so the aspect of this question is God laid down a curse on the woman, but it had to do with her original calling. Okay. So let's dig into that a little bit because we're going to see how that has impacted us today and how it's still impacting us today, and it will continue to impact us and demonstrate what God is doing and emphasizing through the curse. Okay? So, what kind of curse did Eve receive?
Was in childbearing and childbirth.
Okay?
Is that for husband?
Mm-hmm.
Lord husband?
Okay. So there are two aspects of the curse that we have to understand that was given to the woman. As a matter of fact, just observationally, how many verses is that? 1. Okay? Just note that in your mind that God gave her one verse. Okay? Alright. So, greatly increase your pains in childbearing. Okay? Most people put these two together and it's not together. Right? In terms of the physical curses, she's going to have pains in what? Childbearing and then childbirth. Those two curses. Okay? So everything that has to do with childbearing, as in your ability to get pregnant, that was cursed. Morning sickness was a curse. But PMS is a curse. Okay, so it's not just morning sickness when you're pregnant, it's preparation for being pregnant. Even if you're not pregnant, you're still cursed because the childbearing process is cursed. So now you know, oh, it's not just about the pain in childbirth, it's also the pain, anything that is related to the female reproductive system. So you go, man, that's a bummer. That's a bummer. Okay? So, are we able to prevent that from happening? Anybody not a victim of this curse? Okay. So, all the women. Alright. So, there's the second aspect. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. So, is your desire will be for your husband a good thing? No?
Otherwise it's not a curse.
Okay, so we're going to assume, see, here's the great logic about that. Okay? We have to assume that it's negative because it's not a curse otherwise. So when we look at that word and we look at it as a positive thing, we have to change our mind. Right? So it says, your desire will be, who else should she desire but her husband? So that's great. No. Okay, how about but he will rule over you? And that sounds like a curse. Okay, he will rule over you. That's a curse. We live in a male-dominated society. Male chauvinism is rampant. Right? And they just want to rule. Remember, all the problems in terms of leadership and all of that stuff in the past, currently, and in the future, are going to be caused by men rulers. Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, Herod, all of these guys. These are all guys cause a whole lot of problems. Okay? Alright, so what we need to do is we need to trace this thing out. It says, your desire will be for your husband. Okay. Would you turn to the next chapter, 4, beginning with verse 6. Okay. In order to understand what God was saying in chapter 3, we have to go forward. So let's say, we're reading the Bible for the first time and we go, oh, that sounds like a good thing, but, the other thing is bad, so it's half and half. So your desire will be for your husband, but he will rule over you. So that's a good thing that you desire your desire will be for your husband. That's a good thing, but he will rule over you. That's a bad thing. Okay. Until we get to this. In other words, God didn't reveal this exactly until the next chapter, and he uses an illustration. And the illustration is Cain gets jealous about Abel, and he is upset that God is not fair. Okay. All right. And then God confronts him. Verse 6, it says, then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must master it. In Hebrew construction, those words are identical. So, in order to understand that, we have to understand this. So when we understand this, it says, sin desires to have you, but you must master it. Okay. So what's the curse? Woman wants to rule over her husband. But the husband won't let it happen. And then some of you ladies are saying, not in my house. You're not ruling over me. Right? Nobody knows. They said, that curse is not true in my house. Okay? And then you go, well, that means God's not able. Alright? Let's get into that a little bit because we have to understand our husband and wife relationship. After all, this is marriage, right? Okay. So what is the curse? Sin desires to have you. In other words, now I gave her the same inclination that I gave sin. In other words, what is sin trying to do every day of our lives? Rule over us. Tell us what to do. Have its way. Okay? But, what does God want us to do? Overrule sin in our lives. So sin wants to do this. So the ultimate is the illustration. Remember, we keep going back to the illustrations of this, that, and other thing, and more illustrations. But here is Satan, here is Jesus. Two epitomes of good and evil. Sin, or Satan, tries to have its way over Jesus. What does Jesus go or do? He says, nope, you can't do it. Right? So Jesus rules over the devil. Okay? Sin tries to take over us, but we can't allow sin to take over us, so we have to rule over it. God has given the woman, the wife, the same inclination of sin to take over her husband. That's serious stuff.
What do you mean
Inclination as in the desire, the ambition to take over the husband's authority, rule, place, everything. Okay. But the frustrating part is going to be that that's not going to happen. So what is she feeling every single day of her life?
not satisfied?
Angry.
There's clash going on in her life every single day. She wants this, but she gets disappointed. She wants this, she gets. Okay, so let me address the one comment illustration that I made about the woman. Not in my house, because I'm in charge. Okay. Here's the thing. Even if he complies to what you want, it's still frustrating because that's not ultimately what you want. See, what you really want is for him to leave. What you really want, that's what you were originally created for. What you really want is for him to leave, for him to treat you well, for him to guide you and cherish you. So if you're getting your way, you're still not getting your way. Still frustrating. And God says you're not going to get your way. And guess what? I put that desire in you to do what? To do what? Why did he curse the woman like this? What happened in order for her to get the curse? Share, it's okay. You know, we can learn by sharing and grow by experience. So just take a crack. Anytime I ask a question, just, you know, roll it out, because I'll tell you that the more you practice responding, the more you will learn, and the better it will be for you. So, why did God curse her? What did she do? Okay, she made her husband sin. What was your brother? What was your comment? Why did God curse her?
Yeah, same thing. And
Okay,
also
yeah, so
did the
she-
proof first.
Right, she helped him sin. So, why was that an appropriate curse?
Does that also mean because men lack of the ability to figure out what he wants to do? That's why he can follow what, you know.
You don't know how big that is. We'll get to that, okay? Right now, it's just a little, but it's huge, okay? We're gonna get to that. It's huge, all right? And we'll get to that shortly. But yes, the answer to your question is yes, and we're gonna address more of that, okay? Why is the curse appropriate for her, and what does it do to her?
She didn't do it in the first place.
She didn't what?
Let the husband rule over her.
Okay, so she didn't consult him, she didn't follow him, she was leading. Okay. So the curse is appropriate because
She doesn't have it.
she doesn't have, she keeps trying to do it. Now God says, okay, you wanted that, I'm gonna give it to you. Right? That's what he did. You wanted that, I'm gonna give it to you. But I'm never gonna satisfy you with it. That's terrible. It's like, huge. I want that. I want that. I want that. It's like the dog chasing the tail. It never gets it. So the punishment was appropriate for the crime. But, you know, it's not just for the man. I mean, for the woman. It's also for the man too, right? Because he has to deal with the frustration of her trying to take over his life every single day of his life. Okay? Yes, this is primarily a curse for the woman, but certainly the man is impacted by this because there's a relationship. Alright. Here's a when does the curse kick in? Are all women cursed?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. But when does the curse kick in?
For women not to follow God's rule.
Mm-hmm. But I'm talking about, how does she experience the curse if she's not married?
So the curse kicked in before they were married, before she was created.
No, the curse is for married woman only.
She was married after she was created.
So, when does the curse kick in?
When the relationship starts.
When the relationship starts?
Yeah.
What does it say? Your desire will be for
Husband.
husband.
Have the relationship first.
Alright, so when does the curse kick in?
Getting married.
When you say I do.
What? Then not getting married, then you're not gonna get cursed.
No, that's a different kind of curse. Okay, but here, the reason why I say that is because this is what single people say. Okay? Before we got married, everything was great. When we got married, all hell broke loose. I don't know what happened to my wife. Before we got married, we got along. After we got married, something happened. Okay? They don't know that the curse doesn't get released until you get a husband. Okay? So the curse doesn't, the relational curse doesn't kick in until you get the husband. So, if you were surprised, and if the first thing that you said after, short time in marriage, you said, I married the wrong woman, it's not true. That's right. Any woman is going to do the same thing to you. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So now, what do we need to do? We need to equip young men and young women, right, with the understanding and the knowledge that this is the reality of marriage. Don't be surprised. This happened. God has called you to relate together. Okay? Now, this is all bad news. Okay? This is all bad news. I don't have good news for you until next week. Okay? Next week, when we study Ephesians, I have good news for you. Right now, this is all bad news. So I remember I was doing a wedding one time, and I was sharing with the audience this information so that the husband and wife and all the audience would know. Okay, so then I said, after I explained the curse, I said, do you still want to get married? I had already explained to them, of course, the good news of it. I wouldn't do that. Just right on stage. If anybody could show just cause why these two should not be married and both of them won't raise hands, then that would be bad news. I know about the curse. No, you just told me about it. No, I don't want to get married. The good news actually comes in Ephesians, but the bad news has been going on until Ephesians. So how do they do it? How do non-Christians do it when they haven't the good news? Right? How do Christians get along when they don't realize the good news? Well, if they don't know the bad news and they don't know the good news, then they're oblivious, right? But now, I gave you the bad news. We're going to get to the good news. But until then, you're going to have to suffer. So, yes, the curse doesn't kick in until you get married. You'll understand the wisdom of God and the appropriate punishment of God and what He's trying to emphasize in this reality of the curse. And so how does the childbearing and childbirth curse impact her emotionally and as a woman? Those of you who had children, especially. Pardon me? Baby. Yeah. It hurts. But what does Jesus say about having a child? As soon as the baby is born, what happens?
The joy.
Yeah, she's so overwhelmed with joy. What happens?
Forgot about
She forgets about the pain. She goes, let's have another one. Right? Okay, now just imagine the mercy of God, right? Because he says, I'm going to give you the greatest joy that you can have as a woman, giving birth or bringing a child into the world. But it's going to be now wrought with all of this pain. Right? So some women say, I don't want to have children. By saying that, they also miss out on the greatest joy of their lives. So now God put the good with the bad and mixed it together. And what does this illustrate? From the beginning, it illustrates a magnitude of life that we experience and have experienced since. And then we're supposed to understand that in light of what he has ultimately created, and then gave Jesus the whole package. He's got deity, which is the ultimate of goodness. He's got humanity, which is cursed, and then he gets crucified. So you've got the greatest of joys mixed with the greatest of sorrow and pain, and he brought them together. And the woman is supposed to be able to relate to that in her unique way, because that's not ours. That's not our experience. So God has specifically gifted her with that understanding. And without the curse, she wouldn't have understood that. And it hit her where she lived. Because God called her to be that agent, and then gave her that appropriate curse to give her the ability to know God better in that area. So that's amazing grace right there. Question 11. Before the Lord cursed Adam, what was his emphasis or reasons? And why was it absent from the serpent and Eve? What did he emphasize to Adam? Yeah, you listen to your wife. And? Yeah, and what did he say specifically about the commandment? The emphasis was, you disobeyed me when I told whom? You. You there is singular, not plural. I told you not to. I didn't tell her. I told you not to eat. You disobeyed me, and you listened to somebody who told you to do contrary to what I commanded you. So, what aspect of Adam did God's curse touch? And what was the purpose of this curse?
What it was originally intended to.
Okay, what was he originally intended to do?
You got dominion all over everything on here.
Okay, and?
And he made it like a lot harder.
Okay, he made it a lot harder.
Yeah.
What was he supposed to do in terms of the details? There's dominion, yes. He had dominion over, but he had to do what? In terms of the curse, how does it relate?
The ground no longer was his.
You made the ground uncompliant, disobedient.